Well, Bill, the FBI raiding the home of former U.S. Ambassador John Bolton. We are awaiting more details. We are told Bolton is not under arrest. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer is here. We got lots to talk about, including the Biden investigations that you're continuing. But before we do that, let me ask you your initial reaction to this news about Ambassador Bolton's home and I think office being raided by the FBI today.
Well, I appreciate Kash Patel's tweet that no one's above the law. I've always suspected that the deep state was involved in things that, one day hopefully they would be discovered and held accountable. I don't know what John Bolton did. Obviously, he deserves due process. But I do believe that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and John Radcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard are serious about holding the deep state accountable for all the mistakes and all the abuses of power that we've witnessed from the deep state over the past decade. So I think today's a positive day. We'll see what Bolton had in his possession. It appears that they suspect he had somehow mishandled classified documents. I've also always believed that the deep state was closely aligned with a lot of the defense contractors and encouraged a lot of interventions in other countries that I don't think were in the best interest of the taxpayer. So all of this is coming to a head. I'm glad that the Trump administration is in power, and I'm glad that these people are finally being, at the very least, investigated.
Does it give you any concern about the perception of the weaponization of lawfare?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what the liberal media is going to say. This was retribution, that this was weaponized government agencies. I think that's ridiculous because that's what we saw in the Biden administration with respect to President Trump and other conservatives. So I don't think this is retribution. I think this is accountability. We'll see if for no reason they raided his house just to embarrass John Bolton like the Democrats did to President Trump at Mar-a-Lago, then I think that they should bear some criticism. But right now, I have confidence in Kash Patel, and I don't believe he would do anything without having ample evidence to move forward.
Okay. Now, I want to move on to the interview that you had yesterday with the former one of the spokespeople at the Biden White House. That's Ian Sams. And Controller, I'm just going to ask you to play one of the sound bites that we had here for the original intro. I don't have a number for it, but this is your reaction to it yesterday. They don't have it. I will read it. Basically, you said that it was the most informative transcribed interview / deposition that you've had, and that you will give Mr. Sams credit. He answered our questions. He communicated with Joe Biden 2 times. He saw Joe Biden, talk to Joe Biden 2 times the entire stint as he was serving as one of the spokespeople at the White House. Mm-hmm. I'm not entirely surprised by that, but I think it might be eye-opening to people to realize that you could have someone saying that Joe Biden was perfectly fine and how it was gratuitous and wrong for Robert Hur to put that in the report, but not have any major interaction with him himself. Tell us more.
Well, I was surprised, and we had a list of things that we were going to ask Ian Sams. We never dreamed that he had no interaction with President Biden. I mean, this was President Biden's main spokesperson for 2 years. Jean-Pierre was in title only. Ian Sams was the guy that would go up and attack me or the Oversight Committee whenever we would get new bank records that would show the Biden family was involved in an influence peddling scheme. Ian Sams was the one that would go on TV and attack Robert Hur for implying that Joe Biden was in mental decline. And what we found out yesterday was he never even hardly communicated with Joe Biden. In 2 years, he
Sir,
had
can I interrupt you and just play for people some of the things that
Yes.
Ian Sams had said at the time? Watch this montage of Sams and his comments. Watch.
All right.
I dispute that the characterizations about his memory that were in the report are accurate because they're not. And I think the president spoke very clearly about how his mind was on other things.
I think also on this issue of the memory, it's been selectively chopped up and edited and sent around because of the confusing way that report was written.
When I deal with him, he's sharp, he's asking tough questions, and he's speaking, I think maybe most importantly, speaking passionately about what matters to him.
So the reason I wanted to play that last one in particular is because that was 5 days after the debate between Trump and Biden, which sealed Biden's fate and forced him out of the race. And Ian Sams says, when I deal with him, he's sharp, he's asking tough questions. And your reaction to that from yesterday.
That's symbolic of the entire Biden administration. No one was ever around Joe Biden. We've heard Pete Buttigieg make comments that he had limited access to Joe Biden. He was his all-star cabinet secretary. Look, the more that's coming out in our investigation of the inappropriate use of the auto pen, the worse it gets for Joe Biden. It's very clear that he was shielded from even his most senior staffers. And they were given, Ian Sams didn't know what he was talking about. He was given talking points. We are trying to find who wrote those talking points out because he did not communicate with Joe Biden. He testified yesterday that 2 years, any other president would communicate multiple times a day. They would have multiple interactions with their press secretary. Ian Sams met him 2 times. And you think about how many times President Trump or President Obama or President Bush would communicate daily with their press secretary. You would see pictures in the Oval Office where they were prepping them before they would go out. Ian Sams went out every day and implied to the American people that he was communicating with Joe Biden and Joe Biden was healthy. And he was not. And I think the American people are seeing through this investigation and some of the books that have come out that this administration was involved in a major cover-up.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. So in any White House in the administration, you can have many spokespeople who never do have that daily interaction. But he, in these interviews that he did, was saying, in my interactions with him, he's very sharp, and that was just 5 days after that debate. So I think your line of questioning was very interesting, and the results interesting as well. More to come in September, of course, and we'll have you back. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Longtime Republican consultant Roger Stone lambasted Trump advisor turned staunch critic John Bolton after the FBI raid on his Bethesda, Maryland residence on Friday. Good morning, John Bolton. How does it feel to have your home raided at 6 o'clock in the morning? Stone riffed on X, 6 years after the Biden FBI raided his Fort Lauderdale home in an operation to which CNN was reportedly tipped off. Wait, where was CNN? Added Stone, who has often criticized Republicans who become disloyal to President Donald Trump. What goes around comes around, and Roger Stone still did nothing wrong, he said, quoting the catchphrase in shirts that were circulated after his 2019 raid. Stone, who began his political career volunteering for 1964 presidential nominee Senator Barry Goldwater, R. Arizona, before moving on to advising President Richard Nixon, also posted a photo of himself from his arrest wearing a Roger Stone Did Nothing Wrong shirt. Stone continued his critique of Bolton later Friday morning with another X post that included a split photo of the two men. The man on the left had his home raided at 6 a.m. because he did something wrong. The man on the right had his home raided at 6 a.m. because he didn't. Karma is B.
Now, as we told you, President Trump announced Friday he was commuting the sentence of Roger Stone just days before Stone was set to start a 3+ year prison sentence stemming from Robert Mueller's Russian witch hunt. Remember, Stone was convicted of process crimes relating to 2017 and statements he made to House lawmakers. In other words, lying before Congress. Adam Schiff presiding. The biggest liar in Congress. Now, neither the Schiff show nor Robert Mueller produced one bit of evidence that Stone was working with anybody colluding with Russia. And by the way, as the White House press secretary explained, quote, these charges were the product of recklessness born of frustration and malice. Joining us now, Roger Stone, first TV interview, and his attorney, David Schoen. I would like to say to you, Roger, well, I'm glad you had your sentence commuted and you're not headed to prison this week. There's a part of me that is also very angry and very concerned for the country based on the entire handling of your matter. Why don't I just let you say it in your own words, what this has been like for you?
Well, this is the most horrible experience you can have because I see immediately why 99% of the people who choose to plead not guilty and go to trial lose. When you're up against the horrific and deep-pocketed resources of the federal government and these really sadistic, arrogant, politically motivated prosecutors, I had a biased judge, I had a stacked jury, I had a corrupt jury forewoman. As my friend Tucker Carlson said, my trial was over before it started. When you go through something like this, Sean, you find out who your real friends are and who the people are who really never were your friends. You have been a tremendous friend. You have done a great job of keeping people informed. But I have to really single out your Fox News colleague, Tucker Carlson. He took up the cudgels early. He stayed on this case with every twist and turn, wasn't afraid to take on the judge, laid out the jury question. It encouraged me when I got discouraged. He's a man of incredible loyalty, and he's a great friend. He may be the best friend a man can have. So my hat's off to him. And also Congressman Matt Gaetz from Florida, who I hope to live long enough to see in the White House. He was a great friend who never gave up in trying to make sure everybody understood the injustice that I had been through. But so many others, Bernie Carrick, the former New York police commissioner, and Charlie Kirk, Reverend Franklin Graham, pastors Mark Burns and Daryl Scott, Randy Coggins, a dynamic young evangelist from Florida, the entire Flynn family, General Mike Flynn, a man who's still being persecuted. My hat's off to all of them because they helped me and my wife and my family through the scariest, most difficult process of you can imagine. But above all, I must tell you, Sean, based on advice from you and Reverend Graham and the two pastors I mentioned, I really want to thank God because I was literally hours away from being sent to a COVID-infested prison in violation of the current Bureau of Prisons and DOJ policies, in violation of every precedent in the country where people going to jail or in jail were asking for compassionate release. And in every case, it was granted. I'm 67 years old. I've had a lifelong problem of respiratory problems. I was facing what I really believed was a near-death sentence. So you, particularly Tucker, Matt Gaetz, and everybody I named, my heart goes out to you. I'm deeply, deeply grateful. But more than anything else, I'm grateful for God because, as you told me, if I would rededicate my life to Christ, if I would be reborn, I can remember it like it was yesterday. And your advice was as solid as could be. You said God will never desert you. He will never abandon you. He will protect you if you confess your sins and you walk in his way. And I have done my very best to do that.
Let me go through, and I want you to tell people, because there's this whole system of justice where you can use Sammy the Bull Gravano as the biggest case in point. He commits 19 murders, and he's given a get-out-of-jail-free card in a witness protection program because he flipped on John Gotti. All right, put that aside for a second. In your case, did Mueller and his team offer anything of value? Your freedom, for example, I would argue is of great value if you would say certain things they wanted you to say, whether they were true or not.
Well, in the beginning of the case, Sean, I don't think that was their intention. But as they got closer and closer to having to issue the Mueller report, and they realized that they had no Russian collusion because there was no Russian collusion, it was a hoax, on July 24th, Jeannie Rhee, who was heading my prosecution within the Mueller team, that's extraordinary in itself because she previously represented Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation in the illegal email server case and the missing email case. So she had a clear bias. She was a maximum donor to both of Hillary's presidential campaigns. By the way, she has all the charm of a North Korean prison guard. She made it very clear to one of my lawyers after a hearing she asked to see him privately that if I would remember certain phone conversations I had with candidate Trump, if I would come clean, if I would confess, that they might be willing to, recommend leniency to the judge. Perhaps I wouldn't even serve any jail time. And I didn't have to think about it very long. I said, absolutely not. There was no circumstance under which I would bear false witness against the president. I was just not willing to lie. Now, in the last 2 days, when I said that, people said, you see, Stone had the goods on Trump, and he traded his silence for a commutation. That is patently false. I never said that. I never implied that. What I said has been consistent, that I would not lie against my friend of 40 years so they could use it for impeachment. They wanted me to be the ham in their ham sandwich because they knew the Mueller report particularly on Russia, was a dud. It was a goose egg. They had nothing, and they were hoping that I would recharacterize my phone calls. I think these phone calls that were plea bargain induced claims by Michael Cohen and Rick Gates, for which they could never find any corroboration, and I simply refused to do it.
Let me go to you, David Schoen, and I'll ask you both the same question simultaneously. Roger, I think I've known you well enough over the years. You're a fighter. Your instincts are going to be, okay, now I'm going to go back, and maybe if you go back and you appeal this and you open up this case again, I would argue right now you're home free. And I think that I saw nothing but corruption in that courtroom by that judge and that jury and not giving you another trial. David, I would say that if you go forward with that, you are now putting Roger's life back in jeopardy again. And I don't know. I don't have any faith in that system. I don't have any faith in that judge. I don't have any faith with that jury. Nobody on this case, do I believe, is honorable here.
Yeah, I think you're right. You raise a very interesting question and a perplexing one. We have to sit down and make a decision as to whether to go forward with the appeal, knowing that a win in this case, and there should be a win, classic Fifth and Sixth Amendment violations, would go right back to the same judge and a courtroom of injustice. Let me just say this to you. This commutation is a great tribute to President Trump for three reasons. He sends the message that the Mueller team was rotten to the core from its inception. When Mr. Mueller picked Andrew Weissman as his
I've been saying that for over 3 years, David. Screaming
you're right.
it.
You don't pick an investigation that involves the President of the United States requires integrity. You don't pick an Andrew Weissman, who's the most ethically bankrupt prosecutor I've ever come across. I represent two men right now, Mr. Arena, Mr. Sessa, who were wrongfully convicted with him. You talked about making deals with witnesses. He lied about those deals. He was mentioned specifically by a judge for his misconduct. So that's one thing. The Mueller team was rotten to the core, filled with partisans. Number two, an unfair trial. The president recognized that. The judge denied the entire defense theory. Mr. Stone wasn't allowed to mention on social media or make a defense theory that in any way challenged the integrity of the Mueller team. Unprecedented. And thirdly, the president saved a life here because the judge's decision on denying a surrender extension when COVID was in the prison and with these health conditions goes against all authority in the country on this issue, as did the Court of Appeals.
You know, I'm listening to your attorney, and I know David a long time, Roger. I've known you a long time. And you're a character. Everybody knows you're a character. But that's not about you as the character. I would want a fair and impartial jury for everybody. I wouldn't want any Democrat or liberal to have 29 guys in tactical gear over a process crime. I wouldn't want a gag order on any American. They should have a right to speak out in their own defense. I wouldn't want a jury foreperson as prejudiced or a judge that went along with this crap. My question to you is, we've seen this now with Papadopoulos. We've now seen this with Paul Manafort. We saw it with General Flynn. We've seen it with you. I'll be honest, Roger. I believe in our Constitution. I believe in our rule of law. I think I read a lot about equal justice and application of our laws. I don't see any of this in any of these cases. I see a travesty of injustice. You've been a part of it. I don't know. I'm losing faith in the system, Roger.
Well, you have a good reason to. I mean, you examine the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, where I had to file a last-minute emergency appeal of Judge Jackson's rule sending me to jail. She ignored all the legal precedents in that. She ignored my health conditions. She ignored the conditions at the prison at that time. And she ignored the current policies of DOJ and the BOP. Now, you would have thought that that would have been reversed in the appeals court, but they ruled for her 3-0. I'm afraid this is a fixed system. Above all, though, I guess I'd have to say the most important thing here is the courageousness of the president's act. I know there were many, many, many people who told him in an election year, don't do this. Let Roger Stone wait maybe for a pardon after the election. Sean, I don't think I would have lived that long, not with my asthmatic condition, not with now 60 COVID-19 cases in that prison. So I have deep, deep affection for Donald Trump because I've known him 40 years. He's a man of great justice and fairness. He's a man of enormous courage. I knew he would take some shots for this, but I think most people, most fair-minded people understand. He saved my life. And, at least on paper, he gave me a chance to fight for vindication. Now, I'm not a fool. I'm going to be guided by the advice of my lawyers. As I understand it, if my conviction is overturned by the appeals court, I'd be back in front of Judge Jackson. Judge Jackson issued an incredible ruling that said that I could not raise misconduct by the special counsel, the FBI, the DOJ, or any member of Congress, Adam Schiff. So, I mean, if that were in place in General Flynn's case, we still wouldn't know how he was railroaded. We still wouldn't know about the political motivations behind taking him down. So I've got to become convinced I can get a fair second trial, because I certainly didn't get a fair first trial.
You had a gag order and you weren't allowed to even put on your defense. You wanted to put on a defense. They denied you that right. Then, of course, we have the whole jury foreperson. This is on top of the raid, pre-dawn raid. By the way, I'm sure you probably called CNN, Roger, and said that. I do not believe you can get any fair trial in that courtroom or that system. I don't know. I think that probably every fiber of your being would want to be to fight to get the acquittal you believe you should get. But I don't know if I'd give you that advice, because I don't think there's anybody in that courtroom that is fair, Roger.
Well, and as you point out, Comey, Clapper, Brennan, McCabe, Strzok, Page, Rosenstein, Mueller himself, Hillary, they all lied under oath, but they lied about material things, consequential things. Therefore, they had an intent and a motive to lie. I was charged with making misstatements that were innocuous. And if you look at it very carefully, it's very clear what happened here. And that is that Aaron Zelinsky, the corrupt prosecutor, the dirtiest of Mueller's dirty cops, other than Weissman, shared the fruits of the surveillance into me with Adam Schiff so that he could fashion gotcha questions, most of them of no consequence. And then after the setup, in which I appeared voluntarily before the House Intelligence Committee, Schiff, in violation of House rules, shared the classified testimony with Mr. Zelinsky so Mr. Weissman could fashion a very contorted and contrived indictment. Yet today you have Mueller and Schiff and Rosenstein back to saying Stone was in cahoots with Russian intelligence. This is nonsense. They're all the way back to the Russia.
Was there ever
lie.
any evidence of
They
that,
know it's
Roger?
false,
There was
but
not.
they keep
Was there
cycling.
any evidence ever given of any contact with any Russian intelligence?
Here's what there was. There was evidence that I had a Twitter direct message exchange with Guccifer Point 2, a persona. But if you look at when that happened, it happened long after WikiLeaks had published all their material. And if you look at the actual content of the exchange, it's benign. There's no collusion. There's no collaboration. And thirdly, we don't even know that Guccifer 2.0 is a Russian asset. Just because John Brennan says something's true, he said the Steele dossier was real, too. So just because they assert something doesn't mean it's true. I could have proved at trial, using forensic evidence and expert testimony from fellows like Bill Binney, former SNA counterintelligence expert, and Ray McGovern, that no one hacked the DNC, that there was no online hack of the DNC, that the information based on the download times was downloaded to a portable disk and taken out the back door. But I wasn't allowed to present that defense because Judge Jackson would not allow it.
Roger, I want to believe in our system of justice, and in a way it worked, I guess, in the end with the president's commutation. But what happened to you, what happened to Papadopoulos, what happened to General Flynn, what happened to Manafort, what happened to the President of the United States, what happened to Carter Page, we're going to lose this country if this happens again. It's the biggest abuse of power corruption scandal in our history. Glad you're free tonight, Roger. We wish you Godspeed. And David, thank you for the great work you do as his attorney.
He later released a mock statement claiming Bolton admitted his signature mustache was appropriated from a member of the Village People. Bolton, who held diplomatic posts under Presidents George H.W. and George W. Bush before joining President Donald Trump's first administration, later broke with Trump over his handling of COVID-19, his approach to diplomacy, and the impeachment saga. Trump often returned fire at Bolton after their messy breakup, and Stone occasionally chimed in to defend his longtime friend from New York. After Bolton attacked Trump's choice of Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, calling her a serious threat to national security, Stone returned fire.
We're back with the Fox News Alert. We're just learning the FBI agents have raided the Maryland home of former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton. It happened at 7 a.m. this morning.
Shortly after the raid began, FBI Director Kash Patel posting on X, quote, "No one is above the law. FBI agents on a mission."
David Spunt joins us now with more on this breaking news. Hey, David.
Hey, guys, not much we can say at this point, but information will continue to develop. As you mentioned, about 7 o'clock this morning, FBI agents raided Ambassador Bolton's home. Notable, we're being told by two government sources that they are looking for classified documents as part of a potential leak investigation. We're told that Ambassador Bolton is not in custody. He's not under arrest. But it is notable they are at his Maryland home right now. We don't know how many agents are there. We're waiting to get a picture of the scene coming in right now. But we're told Ambassador Bolton, who was just on TV on another network a couple days ago talking about the Russia-Putin-Trump summit, is now under FBI investigation. Now, I want to be clear. These are long, and we're looking at some live photographs right now in Bethesda. That's clearly the road where Ambassador Bolton lives. And you can see some police cars outside there. But, you know, this is going to be a long process. We saw the raid of former Trump advisor Roger Stone's home down in Florida several years ago. Eventually, he went to trial. We saw famously in August of 2022, exactly 3 years ago, a little bit more than 3 years ago, the raid on Mar-a-Lago. That still has the FBI in hot water. That's a little bit of a different situation as it was a former president, but it deals with classified documents, guys.
So I did not realize this, but there was a probe going on when President Trump was in office last time because John Bolton wrote a book. And he violated his NDA, the president said, in doing it. And he felt as though there were classified information in that book. The probe dropped when Joe Biden became president. So is this picking up where that left off, David?
It's possible. I don't know with 100% certainty, but it is notable, guys, that John Bolton, Ambassador Bolton's security clearances were stripped earlier this year by President Trump. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, took that security clearance away. They had concerns. The administration had concerns about Ambassador Bolton still being able to access some of these documents and have some of those security clearances. It's also notable that John Bolton had a security detail as well. Because of the threats from Iran on his life, that security detail, that government federal paid security detail, was also taken away by President Trump. So Bolton was to have to get some private security. So we're looking outside this home right now in Bethesda, Maryland. We're told that Ambassador Bolton's being cooperative. He's not under arrest, not in custody at this point. But still notable, 7 o'clock on a Friday morning, that the FBI all of a sudden is knocking on the door of John Bolton's home. And I also will say it's important that, you know, this is not just the FBI able to do this. A judge has to sign off on this. There are other layers involved here. It's not just the FBI says, let's go to John Bolton's house tomorrow morning and see if he has any classified documents. There are certainly more procedures in there. A judge and others would have had to sign off on this, as well as people at the Justice Department, presumably Attorney General Pam Bondi. No comment right now, though, from the Justice Department. No comment from the FBI as well.
So this started 40 minutes ago, and so agents are still, we believe, in the house right now going through things?
That's what we're told. Yes, absolutely. They're going through things. It's not clear if he's still on scene, if he's in the house while this is happening. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes the subject who owns the home or owns the property is not there. We know during the raid at Mar-a-Lago, President Trump was not even there at all. It was the summer, and he doesn't live at Mar-a-Lago in the summer. So it's not clear if Ambassador Bolton was even home. We're working to find that out. But we know that he was just this is his primary residence. This is where he lives. He does TV appearances. He's still out and about. So it's unclear exactly where he is right now, but I'm just told he's not in custody. This deals with classified records, potential classified records, And, at which point we'll see down the line if a grand jury feels there is enough evidence for charges. But this is really the first step in what could be a long process, because they have to bring, first of all, agents have to sift through this information, go through all of this information. That could take weeks, that could take months. Then they present that information to a grand jury. A grand jury would say we have what's called a true bill, which means an indictment, and then the court proceedings happen. So I don't want to get over my skis and predict that that's going to happen. May not happen, but it's still notable that this is going on right now.
In these raids, the New York Post is reporting that they busted into his home in Bethesda, Maryland. In a raid, normally, do they have, how do they get in the house? Would they ring the doorbell first and Bolton would come to the door?
Correct. Yeah, that's usually what it is. I mean, they would ring the doorbell. I mean, that's the proper way that agents usually handle these situations. There's usually kind of a de-escalation of these things before tensions rise. And sometimes if they need to bust through the door. I've not confirmed that independently that they busted through the door. I'm not sure if it was any sort of ramrod or anything like that. So I don't want to get ahead of it. But that is possible. Yes, they will if they feel that they have probable cause to get inside and need to get inside. I will note we've not heard from Ambassador Bolton yet. I'm sure we will through his attorney or possibly himself. So it's something we're going to watch and see what he has to say. But as of now, this is still going on, 42 minutes or about 45 minutes or so into this on a Friday morning in a busy news cycle here in Washington, D.C.
So, obviously this comes after there's been renewed scrutiny of James Comey, former FBI director, and some of the leaks that came from his office. Do we have any sense that there are other figures that the FBI is looking at as part of this investigation?
Well, we're not clear what this investigation is specifically, but yes, you're right that Fox has reported independently, yes, that agents are looking at James Comey. They're looking at, when I say agents, I should say the Department of Justice, looking at James Comey, looking at James Clapper, looking at John Brennan. Clapper was the former Director of National Intelligence. John Brennan, former CIA Director. So it's not clear if this is related to that, because John Bolton kind of hung in different circles than Comey and Clapper. He was on the inside during the first Trump administration as his national security advisor. So I'm not exactly sure if this is related to that. But it's notable this is related to classified documents. It looks like there was someone there in the front door. I'm not exactly sure who that is when the camera...
We were seeing FBI agents walk in, and then someone walked in. It looked like a female in civilian clothes, but it looked like she was holding papers, so maybe she works for the government.
Could be. Yeah, could be. Exactly.
Thank you so much.
No problem. When we find out more, we'll let you know. You bet.
John Bolton was a contributor here for years. He was a vital member of the Bush administration. And when he walked in to help President Trump, there was a lot of optimism there would be a good match. They did some good things. He said, I was never proud of the president that when he walked away from the second Kim Jong-un meeting and refused to acquiesce, allowed to have a nuclear weapon, so he walked out. So, but since that time, he's been an extreme critic, even as late as last night.
Watching War Pig John Bolton attack the appointment of Tulsi Gabbard as DN makes me all the more certain that she is precisely the right person for the job, Stone said in November. After the raid on Bolton's home, FBI agents were also seen in DuPont Circle, D.C., removing boxes from the Baltimore native's personal office.